Hey guys, Jim here. Time to share with you a knife that I've been excited about for a while and I finally got my greasy little paws on. And that is the collaboration effort between Microtech and Strider. More specifically, Tony Marfione and Mick Strider. And when the project was announced, a lot of us got really excited. I know for me, it's because I truly love both brands, both in the production knives that they manufacture and each for the custom makers and the knives that they create. They're incredible and they've got some great ideas, and I think melded together, nobody really knew what to expect. And what came out of that idea was this knife, the DOC, Death on Contact. It is something to behold, and when you first look at it, you see the obvious design influence from Strider, very much like an SMF here. Same kind of shape to the frame, gets wider toward the end and narrower toward the blade. So when you've got it in your hand, it feels very, very secure. It doesn't feel like it's going to come out this way. And then you see the inspirations from Tony Marfione. You see the incredible blade shape for one, which is very reminiscent of the whale shark. And then, of course, you have the very complex grind. They're actually, both of these grinds are going to be flat grinds with a pretty serious swedge toward the top. A lot of companies are doing compound grinds. They're doing a hollow grind here with a flat grind at the nose, and they went with two flat grinds. It's an interesting geometry in the way that they achieve this, and it's kind of neat, but unfortunately it casts a shadow in there that almost makes it look like there's a defect in the blade, or it's, I don't know, marked up in some way or dirty or abused. It's kind of weird how that came together. And then of course you have all the hardware as provided by Microtech. And the titanium backspacer, which is found, it was originally found on the whale shark that made its way to the SOCOM Delta. Actually, I don't know if the SOCOM Delta came before, but you know, it's on the same backspacer on both of those. And then we'll get to what I like to call the fuck you clip. We'll talk about that more in a minute. So let's talk about the knife in general. It's 9 inches overall, making it a very, very large knife. Giving you a comparison here, we'll throw a bodega up next to it. And for having pretty much the exact same blade length, because of the Strider shape, because of that SNG shape, or excuse me, SMF shape, you're going to have the butt sticking out a lot further. A lot of guys are going to like that because it fills your hand a lot more and it feels a little bit more secure. So there's a quick size comparison. It's a 3 3/4 inch blade with just about 3 1/4 inches of cutting area, and that's due to the really, really big choil, which again, there's your Strider influence once again with the really, really big forward choil. The whole thing is just incredible. This particular blade is the satin blade. It was the only one that I wanted because it was the only one that really didn't mask the unique geometry of this blade. When you get into the B-blasted blade or you get into the black DLC, you know, the flats aren't going to be as pronounced, the grinds aren't going to be as pronounced. They still look great. I just like the more dramatic effect on the satin, and a lot of people have, because the satin is the hardest one to get. It's the one that keeps selling out the quickest. The blade is done in Elmax steel, which I love. I think Elmax is fantastic. And I would have the faith that Microtech did the blades justice, because we know that there have been issues with zero tolerance. There have been issues with Lion Steel, with their Elmax. It's really given Elmax a black eye. And if you go to a custom knife maker and get a blade done in Elmax, you've got one of the best blade materials you can possibly get, because they know how to work with it. When you don't heat treat it properly, you have issues. And the other issue is with production knives using Elmax, you know, you're not getting somebody on the level of, let's say, an Elliott at Ferrum Forge. You're not going to have 20 of those people on your floor grinding blades that had that level of skill. They're not quenching the blades nearly enough. They're heating them up during the grinding. And because of that, they're losing their edges extraordinarily fast on production knives with Elmax. So if you heard somebody say, yeah, I bought a knife with Elmax, I got this cool lion steel, or the tie spine, or I got 0561 from ZT, and it's a great knife, but I used it literally one day and it dulled, I'll never buy Elmax again. Remind them of that fact. Don't run away from Elmax just because of a few production errors. And from what I understand, Zero Tolerance is looking into correcting those issues for future production. You are going to get an aluminum frame. It's a very, very, very heavy knife. It's heavier than I expected. This thing is 7 ounces, and I did not expect that. This is a really heavy knife for using aluminum. So they're using aluminum, hard anodized, and the inserts here are pretty much just grip tape. It's like skateboard tape. And I wasn't sure how I would warm up to that when I first started looking at them. And I was already dreaming up ideas of who to send the knife to do custom inlays. And I wasn't even sure what material I wanted to put in there, but I knew there was a lot of room. But as I've played with it and held it in my hands, I like the grippiness that the grip tape gives you. It's actually really, really cool. And it's an abrasive. It's almost like sandpaper, so do keep that in mind. But because they inset it, now is also very, very smart, they inset it instead of just putting it over the top. It's not going to tear up your pockets when you're taking your knife in and out or just carrying it when it moves around and rubs around. It's going to have the same sub-frame lock that's found in a lot of the newer Microtechs, like the SOCOM Delta and the Whale Shark. And it's called a subframe lock because it's not a true frame lock. A frame lock would be, a notch cut out of the frame and this area cut out and then bent inward from the frame material. It's obvious you have an aluminum frame, and this is not aluminum. This is made of titanium. And then you have that stainless steel lock bar insert that's actually removable, exchangeable, and adjustable. So if you start to see incredible wear, this can actually be adjusted to give you a little bit more room to slide it up. It's a really ingenious idea, and so far it's served Microtech very, very well. Very high quality, super, super little invention there. Then we get to, let's see, what else should we get to before we get to the clip? Oh, the backspacer. I love this backspacer. Really nicely done. It's got a nice look to it. And that's one thing that Microtech really does well. They give you a lot of bang for your buck in the details. When you look at their hardware, yes, the tri-wing screws are a pain in the ass if you're the kind that likes to take down your knives all the time because you have to buy the special tool, which is really expensive. But, there are knives out there that sell for $1,500, hand-built customs, that have very simple hardware store type of screws in them. And when you see custom manufactured hardware like you do on a Microtech, it blows me away. It absolutely blows me away. I love that futuristic look that it brings. All right, bearing system built into the pivot. So it is smoother than you would expect it to be. It is not the smoothest flipper in the world. But here's the cool thing. It's got an extraordinarily strong detent. Almost to the point where, oh my God. Yeah, you're really not going to open that up with a thumb stud. So it's got a very strong detent. Oh my goodness, look at that. And it's not like, oh, Jim is weak. Look, you can see it digging into my finger. But when you activate that flipper and the way that it's shaped and the jimping that's on it, it's fantastic. It fires full every single time. And you'll see that the detent's even hard to overcome as it engages the top part of the lock bar here. Now, it's not as smooth as I'd like it to be. I mean, I'm really having to knock it down. So I'm thinking a little bit of break-in, a little bit of lubrication, and that's going to work fine because I know the bearings on when I had the Whale Shark custom and, with the SOCOM Delta and whatever, operated very smoothly. So I expect it to break in nicely. Now we get to the part that everybody, and I mean everybody, universally hates. And that's the clip. The pocket clip is insulting. I mean, it's insulting to the consumer. I mean, it's like coming home to find your wife having sex in your bed, and then she looks up at you as you walk in and asks you to hand her the lube on the dresser next to you because she wants to finally try anal. I mean, that's how insulting this clip is. It's adding insult to injury. Tony clearly hates the world and wants you to feel his wrath. It's like his middle finger to the world. That's why I hereby dub it the fuck you clip. Because it's kind of what he's saying. I mean, think about it, guys. Whomever the production manager is had to have put this knife in his hand. I'm going to have to assume that Tony himself has put this knife in his hand. It may have gone through a committee of people that put this knife in their hand. And if you don't feel, I mean, look at that. If you don't feel that, you're an absolute idiot. And I'm blown away that they would allow their names to be on a knife, on the clip itself, the offending appendage of this knife, and let it out in public like that. This is disgraceful. I know more people that have sold this knife immediately upon receiving it because they couldn't stand how the clip felt. I mean, it's not just a minor discomfort, it's actual pain. If you're holding it in a standard grip, it's not that bad. It's digging, I mean, it's still digging in, but this is a tougher part of your hand. When you choke up on that choil, like a lot of us are going to want to do, it's going right in there. Look, let me just give it one quick squeeze, and you see what it does. That's jackassery right there. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be offensive to anyone. I know some of you may not appreciate cursing or whatnot, but I mean, this is insulting. This is just horrible. If you buy a custom version, you don't get a clip that's nearly as offensive. It's like that much of it's cut off of there. And not only does it feel terrible in the hand, but the tension is so strong. I had a really hard time carrying this today. Getting it in and out of my pocket was a chore. You literally had to reach under and open it to get it into the pocket, and then take a hand on the pocket lip and then a hand on the knife and shove it all the way in till it finally opened up. And then getting it out, thank goodness, I actually put a lanyard on it, but I just did some photography on it, so I wanted to take it off. Without the lanyard, it would have really, really been difficult. So yeah, I mean, that's 100% fail right there. But in my opinion, it's not worth giving up on a great knife just because of one easily reparable issue. You can go to any knife pimper and have them put a new clip on there for you, or simply cut this one down where the ducktail isn't as severe and then round off the edges. And I think that would be a quick fix. I want to have a custom clip made for me. I don't want to deal with the clip as it is. So I have to categorize this knife a little bit differently than I do other flippers. I look at this really purely as a tactical kind of knife. I mean, it's made for combat. It's made to just handle the roughest of crap. So I can cut it some slack that it's not going to be as smooth as a Shirogorov. Shirogorov would not be able to live up to the abuse that this knife will. It's not made for the same kind of cutting, and it's certainly not made for any kind of combat. This, you can get an amazing, once the fuck you clip is gone, you can get an amazing grip on it in a lot of different positions. It feels secure, and I love this new shape here, this extra curvature at the front and rear. Your fingers just drop into it. You've got a lot of different grip choices on this, and everything feels wonderfully secure. You've got a fairly thick blade on here, nice and tough, and even at the tip, you've got a good amount of blade stock there. I'm not the kind that ever condones using a nice expensive knife as a pry bar, but in the field, if you should need to use it for that, I would do it. More so than I would on some of the other knives that I have. They may look like tactical knives sometimes, but they're really not up to that task. And I think this really is, and that again is more of that mixed strider influence. If anybody knows how to make a tough, combat-hardened folding knife, or fixed blade knife for that matter, it's mixed strider. The overall aesthetical quality, the added little bits to the hardware. I mean, you gotta realize these are individually blasted. These are, all the hardware is steel. The only thing that's titanium on here is gonna be the backspacer. All of this is blasted finely, and I apologize, the subframe lock is also titanium. But you look at the screws against that subframe lock, they look identical as if they were titanium also. All of the finer details are amazing. So I know it sounds like I'm being overly critical of Microtech, and I do know that it comes off a little bit harsh, and I apologize for that. It's just, it almost ruins the entire knife. But if you take that out of the equation, this is really a superbly built knife. And you got to realize this is not a mid-tech that you're spending $500, $700, $800 for. It's not a custom you're spending over $1,000 for. Now it is if it's one of the Marfione custom variations, but you're looking at a knife that sells for, their full retail was $345, I believe. You can routinely find these between $3 and $315. And still, $300 is expensive for a production knife, and I don't want to downplay that. But when you consider the competition that's out there, I think this is a very finely tuned machine for its expressed purpose. It's a great EDC knife, even though it is very, very heavy. You really have to understand that 7 ounces is almost unacceptable for an aluminum frame knife. But you've got quite a chunky ass blade right there. It's made to be carried every day. It's meant to see hard use, and it's meant to see possibly combat or combat-like conditions. And I do believe that this is the type of knife that can live up to that. You've got a nice big open lanyard area built into the tie-back spacer. Perfect. It's right at the very end. Phenomenal. You can almost take the pocket clip off entirely because the knife is so big. Let it sit down in your pocket and just have an extra long lanyard hanging out. This is one of those knives that I was iffy on when I first opened the box. And, you know, it's always nice when you get a new knife, you've been excited about waiting for it to arrive, and it gets there and it blows you away out of the gate. And you've heard a lot of the videos that I've done where I'm truly blown away from the instant I opened the box. And this was one, it's taking me a little bit of time, and I'm consistently warming up to it more and more. And I think this is going to end up being a keeper. I don't know. There may be something that I don't really appreciate about it even after I modify the clip. But for right now, I look at this and I look at all of the attention to detail. I look at the quality in the manufacturing. The fact that they're smart enough to do things like this. Okay, that your thumb stud is really actually your blade stop. They're not really a thumb stud. And you'd be worried about steel slamming into softer aluminum time and time again. Well, what they've done is they have steel inserts, and that goes in and all the way around the pivot. So it's a very strong support structure. It's not just a couple little pieces of steel. They are brought into, you could almost call it a subframe if you want to, right in there. You're not going to overextend the lock bar because part of this steel lock insert goes down into the frame and prevents you from overextending the lock bar. All of those little details that you always have to pay extra for or get into a higher end mid-tech or custom to get, that's what Microtech has been including in their standard factory production knives. So to see the combination of the fantastic grip shape of this frame from Strider, the fantastic blades and incredible sharpness that Microtech is really known for, I think it's a win-win. Get rid of that dumbass pocket clip, and this is a 100% winner that I would recommend to anyone looking to spend under $350 for a high-quality, everyday use knife. It really is that good, and I think with some break-in, the action is going to get even better. But it is a very positive detent and a very strong opening, so that you don't have any concerns about. It is going to rip out every time. It just doesn't have like liquid smoothness to it like a more expensive knife would. But again, you've got to keep the price range in mind when you're considering that. So that's pretty much it for me. I wanted to give you guys as much of an in-depth look to it as I could. And I didn't really show this part here. This is the other thing that I would change if I could. I don't like billboards. I despise billboards. you're taking more than a third of the entire size of the blade with markings. Shit shouldn't even be there. It cheapens the look all the way around. So, it's one of those things, you know. I really don't like having the word death on contact on there either. Imagine if for some odd reason this was your oh shit backup and you had to use this to defend your life, and you're in court a year later defending that you're carrying a knife that looks like a killing weapon, because you know what the prosecutors, how they go crazy on that, and that it literally says death on contact on the blade. And I'm sorry, this is a consumer product. Really not a good idea to put that on there. So maybe that's another reason that you might want to consider maybe not EDCing the knife. That's entirely up to you and your personal beliefs. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up with this. So yeah, if the clip issue is somehow rectified, I would say it's 100% winner, out of the park in every way. Otherwise, if you're going to take a chance and you like everything else about the knife, you hate the clip like I do and they don't change it, have it modified or have it replaced, and you're going to end up with one hell of a great tactical carry knife. All right, guys, I'm out of here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. I love to read them, and I'll do my best to respond. Thanks.